The courthouse in downtown Austin was cloaked in early morning fog, the chill seeping through the heavy oak doors. 17-year-old Emily Carter clutched her worn notebook as she walked beside her father, Marcus, whose work uniform still smelled faintly of motor oil and cleaning solvents. Today was crucial. Their finances couldn't stretch to a private attorney, and the public defender's reputation for inattention offered little comfort. Emily's palms were slick with sweat as they approached the courtroom steps, the gray sky above promising another drab, humid Texas morning. Inside, the courtroom felt oppressive, every polished surface reflecting the austere lighting. Judge Nathaniel Cole sat behind the elevated bench, his gavel resting ominously before him. He was a large man, meticulously groomed, exuding authority in a way that made Emily's chest tighten with anxiety. The all-white audience murmured quietly, some snickering, as she was ushered to her place. Her public defender, Mr. Jennings, shuffled papers in a worn leather briefcase, barely looking up. "Emily Carter, right? Trespassing at the Grandview Hotel. You should take the plea deal," he said, voice low but firm. "First offense, technically second if you count the park incident. Cole is tough on teens from neighborhoods like yours. Community service beats juvenile detention." Emily's throat tightened. She wanted to protest, to explain, but the weight of the courtroom stifled her voice. She thought of the notebook, filled with months of meticulous observations, charts, quotes, and detailed notes exposing patterns of unfair treatment she had seen across county courtrooms. That evidence, carefully hidden, was her shield. Across town, Cole adjusted his silk tie in the mirrored foyer of his Westlake residence, the morning sunlight glinting off his Rolex. He sipped coffee, placed precisely where he expected it, grumbling about the influx of juvenile cases. A hotel trespasser. He would make an example today. His phone call to the hotel manager was clipped. Make sure the girl knows the law applies to everyone, especially those who think rules don't concern them. Back at the courthouse, Emily quietly observed each proceeding before her own case. White teenagers caught shoplifting received warnings and minimal community service. When a black teenager appeared for a minor vandalism charge, Cole's voice became icy, handing down maximum penalties without hesitation. Emily's pen moved quickly across her notebook, recording every detail. When called, Emily walked to the defendant's table, her steps measured and deliberate. Cole barely looked up, sighing theatrically. "Another trespassing case. Seems like an epidemic of young people thinking they can go wherever they please." Jennings muttered something about her being a first-time offender, but Cole interrupted sharply, citing a prior incident. Emily's heart raced as she quietly explained she had been at the hotel for a scholarship program. Cole scoffed, questioning the legitimacy, his tone condescending. Emily's pen moved furiously, documenting his reactions, his dismissive comments, and the glaring disparity in treatment compared to others. The tension spiked when Cole noticed her writing. "What are you writing?" he barked. Emily's eyes met his, calm despite the fear curling in her stomach. "Just notes, Your Honor," she said. He demanded the notebook, flipping through it with a growing frown. Inside were dates, quotes, and statistical observations showing clear patterns of bias in his courtroom. His mockery faltered briefly before he returned it, disdainfully commanding more obedience. Emily's jaw tightened. She had planted the seeds of accountability. Outside, a thin beam of sunlight reflected off the courtroom windows, illuminating her determined face. She knew that today was the beginning of something larger than herself, and as Cole leaned back, smugly satisfied, she felt the first flicker of hope ignite within her. Emily returned to her seat, heart still pounding, trying to steady her breathing. Marcus leaned in quietly, whispering, "Stay composed. Remember, your strength is in your calm." She nodded, hiding her trembling hands under the table, fingers brushing the worn edges of her notebook. The courtroom seemed to hold its collective breath as Cole continued, lecturing her about trespassing and perceived disrespect, his voice echoing harshly off the marble walls. "Explain why you thought you belonged at the Grandview Hotel," Cole demanded, leaning forward. Emily swallowed hard, her voice steady despite the shame rising like heat. "I was invited for a scholarship interview and a program designed to support students from underrepresented communities." Cole's eyebrows shot up, incredulous. "Scholarship program? In a hotel? Explain that." Emily straightened, meeting his gaze. The National Merit Scholars Program arranges interviews in professional spaces to ensure students are treated with dignity and seriousness. Cole scoffed, waving the comment away. But Emily's pen did not stop moving. She recorded every smirk, every dismissive gesture, and every word dripping with condescension. The courtroom seemed to grow tighter, the air heavier with the weight of anticipation. Observers in the back row leaned forward, silent witnesses to the unfolding confrontation. Emily's notebook became a map of injustice, every detail a potential lifeline. Suddenly, a voice called out from the back of the courtroom, smooth, confident, and precise. Emily Carter. A woman in a tailored charcoal suit approached, her presence commanding. Dr. Vanessa Brooks, educational director of the scholarship program, extended a hand with an embossed business card. Emily's pulse quickened. Dr. Brooks confirmed the hotel booking, explaining that the arrangement was through the program's corporate office, not hotel management. "We've been monitoring your situation and reviewing similar reports," she said, nodding at Emily's notebook. "Your documentation aligns with patterns we've noticed across multiple courtrooms this year." Cole's jaw tightened as Emily and Dr. Brooks exchanged brief, purposeful glances. The courtroom had shifted subtly. The power balance that Cole relied on was beginning to crack. Marcus watched silently, pride and worry etched in equal measure across his face. Emily felt a surge of determination. She would not falter. The judge barked orders, attempting to reassert control, but Dr. Brooks' presence and Emily's meticulous record-keeping were an invisible shield. "Take note of the precise times, interactions, and the discrepancies in treatment," Dr. Brooks whispered quietly to Emily. The teen's hands moved with renewed purpose, jotting down page after page of observations. Cole's irritation grew, his usual theatrics becoming strained and uneven. Each attempt to humiliate Emily was recorded, each manipulation documented for future reckoning. Then a plot twist emerged. The hotel's corporate office confirmed, via an official letter, that the National Merit Scholars Program had indeed reserved the conference room Emily attended. The paperwork lay ready in Dr. Brooks' folder, a tangible weapon against Cole's false accusations. Emily's notebook now contained proof that would dismantle his carefully cultivated authority. She glanced at her father, whose eyes glistened with quiet pride. This was more than a single case. It was a confrontation between meticulous truth and unchecked power. As the courtroom settled into an uneasy silence, Emily realized that her courage, her preparation, and her unwavering attention to detail were about to ripple far beyond this morning's hearing. Cole's overconfidence, fueled by years of unchallenged authority, had blinded him to the truth. And in that moment, as she prepared to present her carefully compiled evidence, Emily felt a strange mix of fear and exhilaration. The real battle was just beginning, and the outcome would reshape not only her life, but the justice system she had begun to study so closely. Emily felt the weight of every gaze in the courtroom, the air thick with tension and anticipation. Judge Cole's face reddened, a vein throbbing along his temple as he rifled through his notes, attempting to regain control. The public gallery buzzed quietly. Whispers rippled through the observers as Dr. Brooks and her team quietly conferred, reviewing Emily's documentation and the hotel's confirmation letter. Emily's hand hovered over her notebook, ready to speak, heart racing but mind focused. Cole's voice cut sharply across the room. "You claim a scholarship program authorized this visit. Proof." Emily slowly stood, opening her notebook with deliberate care. Pages filled with dates, times, and cross-referenced incidents of courtroom behavior were revealed, each entry a meticulous record of bias and inconsistency. Cole leaned back, a flicker of unease betraying his usual composure. The courtroom seemed to exhale collectively, as if the very walls acknowledged the shifting tide. "Your Honor," Dr. Brooks spoke calmly, stepping forward, "here is the confirmation from the Grandview Hotel's corporate office. Emily Carter was invited to participate in our program. She was escorted directly to the Oakwood conference room by hotel staff. Her presence was entirely authorized." Cole snatched the letter, skimming it with mounting frustration. "I don't need a lecture on procedure from a student," he barked, but his voice carried less authority than usual. Emily's pen captured the exact tone, every dismissive gesture, and the subtle micro-expressions betraying his faltering confidence. A sudden hush fell over the room as a tall man rose from the back row, crisp in a tailored suit. "Your Honor, I am Julian Pierce of Marshall and Reed Law Offices. I will be taking over Ms. Carter's defense effective immediately." Cole's eyes widened. "This is highly irregular, Mr. Pierce." Pierce remained calm, placing credentials on the bench. "All motions are properly filed. No sentence has been entered yet. I am well within procedural bounds." The shift was palpable. The courtroom energy had pivoted. Observers leaned in, cameras focused, and Cole's veneer of control began to crack. Pierce addressed Cole directly. "Your Honor, I request immediate dismissal of charges against Ms. Carter. The prosecution has no evidence, and your prior assumptions are based on unverified statements." Cole's fists clenched around the gavel. "Objection overruled," he shouted, but the courtroom had already sensed the tide turning. Emily's notebook lay open, the pages of careful observation ready to support every word. Dr. Brooks handed Pierce the hotel documents, and the prosecutor hesitated, caught in the rising wave of undeniable evidence. Marcus watched his daughter, awe mixing with anxiety. Her composure, her courage, her meticulous preparation had transformed the dynamic entirely. Emily met Pierce's gaze briefly. The silent encouragement reinforced her resolve. She was no longer a passive participant, she was an active force in exposing injustice. Every calculated note and observation a piece of a larger truth. Cole slammed the gavel, attempting to regain dominance. "I am the court. I decide what is evidence." Pierce responded evenly, producing a folder of court transcripts showing inconsistent treatment of defendants based on race and socioeconomic status. "Your Honor, statistical analysis over 6 months shows a clear pattern. Minority defendants receive harsher sentences and less time with counsel. This is not conjecture, it is data." A collective murmur spread through the room. Cole's attempts at theatrics failed against the combination of meticulous documentation, credible witnesses, and precise legal procedure. Emily's observations, once dismissed as a teenager's hobby, now carried institutional weight. The first seeds of accountability had been planted, and the courtroom's energy shifted irreversibly. The battle between truth and entrenched authority had begun in earnest, with Emily at the center, her notebook poised as both shield and sword. And as Cole's frustration mounted, he could not yet see the full scope of the reckoning that awaited him. The tension in the courtroom had escalated to a near-tangible force. Every eye was on Emily as she rose again, notebook clutched tightly to her chest. Julian Pierce gestured subtly, giving her the signal to proceed. She drew in a measured breath, steadying the tremor in her hands, and began speaking with calm authority. "For the past 7 months, I have meticulously tracked courtroom proceedings across 3 county courts. My research began as a school project, but evolved as I noticed systemic patterns affecting defendants like me." Emily turned a page, revealing a series of charts and graphs. Each bar and line represented data, sentence lengths, interruptions, and differential treatment based on race and socioeconomic status. Specifically, in this courtroom, Black defendants have received sentences averaging 67% longer than white defendants for identical charges, she said. Cole shifted uncomfortably, his usual smirk replaced with a tight-lipped tension. The audience murmured, some leaning forward to better see the visual evidence she presented. Dr. Vanessa Brooks stepped forward to reinforce Emily's findings. "Your Honor, Emily Carter's presence at the Grandview Hotel was authorized by the National Merit Scholars Program. This program specifically reserves professional spaces for student evaluations to ensure fairness and dignity. The hotel's corporate office has verified her attendance and escort." She handed over the official documents. Cole's eyes flicked over the pages, his impatience visible but ineffective against the weight of proof. Pierce seized the moment. "Judge Cole, I also submit for the record an analysis of your sentencing patterns. Across 137 cases, minority defendants experienced more interruptions and received harsher penalties. The pattern is statistically significant and cannot be attributed to random variance." Cole's face flushed, his voice rising. "This is preposterous. How dare you accuse me of bias?" Emily felt a surge of resolve. The courtroom had shifted. The power Cole relied upon was crumbling under scrutiny. "Your Honor," she said quietly but firmly, These observations are factual. Every session, every statement, every decision I have recorded follows a precise methodology. The data is clear. Disparities exist. A murmur rippled through the observers, some nodding in acknowledgement. Cole banged his gavel repeatedly, attempting to assert control, but his authority was fractured. Marcus leaned closer to Emily, whispering, "I'm proud of you. Keep going." She smiled briefly, a mix of fear and determination coursing through her. Every note, every chart in her notebook was a testament to her courage. Then a new figure entered the scene, Director Lena Morrison of the State Judicial Ethics Committee. She presented her badge and stepped to the front. "Judge Cole, we have been monitoring multiple complaints regarding your conduct. The documentation provided by Emily Carter today aligns with our investigations. Her methodology is sound, and the data supports allegations of systemic bias and abuse of power." Cole's jaw tightened. This was no longer a routine case. He was being scrutinized, exposed in front of his peers, his staff, and now the state's ethics committee. Emily's voice, calm yet unwavering, became the lens through which the entire courtroom now viewed him. Her meticulous research, her courage to speak truth in the face of intimidation, had turned what began as a personal defense into an investigation that could alter the course of the justice system itself. As she concluded her presentation, the courtroom remained in stunned silence. The combination of verified hotel records, data analysis, and expert witness testimony left Cole exposed and vulnerable. Emily sat down, her notebook still open, realizing the gravity of the moment. She had not just defended herself, but had ignited the first sparks of systemic accountability. And as Cole's eyes darted nervously, it became clear. This confrontation was no longer merely about trespassing. It was about the integrity of the court itself. Cole's hands trembled slightly as he gripped the gavel, the weight of authority feeling heavier than ever. He cleared his throat, trying to mask the unease spreading across his face. Observers, court staff, and even the prosecutor watched closely. The room had shifted from routine proceedings to a high-stakes reckoning. Emily's calm, steady presence contrasted sharply with the judge's fraying composure. Every page she had meticulously filled with observations, every chart, every date, now carried undeniable significance. Pierce rose, holding a tablet displaying additional transcripts. "Your Honor, I submit further evidence. These records demonstrate consistent disparities in your courtroom. White defendants with similar charges received probation at 7 times the rate of minority defendants. Court-appointed attorneys for minority clients were allowed less than 5 minutes of consultation on average, compared to over 12 minutes for white clients." Cole's fists clenched, knuckles whitening, but the evidence was undeniable. Emily's gaze remained steady. She had been prepared for this moment for months, anticipating every argument, every attempt to undermine her credibility. Her pen continued to capture micro-expressions, gestures, and verbal cues, subtle clues of discomfort and tension. Dr. Brooks whispered softly, reviewing the data with her, reinforcing the precision of her notes. Marcus watched silently, pride mixed with anxiety. The courtroom's energy was electric, every observer sensing the imminent exposure of long-hidden patterns of discrimination. Cole attempted to interject, voice raised, but Pierce cut him off with procedural authority. "Your Honor, the defense is presenting verifiable facts. These are not opinions. These are documented observations verified by third-party evidence." Cole slammed the gavel, a hollow sound as though striking the air. Emily's notebook lay open, detailing every instance of bias, interruption, and disparate sentencing. The State Judicial Ethics Committee's director, Lena Morrison, stepped closer to the bench. Her presence radiated authority and calm. "Judge Cole, we have been reviewing multiple complaints regarding your conduct. Emily Carter's documentation today provides clear, corroborated evidence supporting patterns of bias in your courtroom. These findings align with our ongoing investigations." Cole's eyes darted around, realizing the breadth of scrutiny. For years, his unchecked authority had shielded him, but now it had been stripped away in full view of witnesses, attorneys, and officials. Then another twist surfaced. The Grandview Hotel's corporate office issued a formal statement, confirming Emily's authorized presence for the scholarship interview and program. The time-stamped records and escort documentation left no room for dispute. Even Victor Langford, the hotel's owner, had to acknowledge the oversight of his local management, admitting that the program's scheduling was legitimate. Cole's face grew pale, and for the first time, his commanding presence faltered. Emily felt a quiet surge of determination. Her meticulously documented research, her courage to speak under pressure, and her unwavering attention to detail had shifted the balance. This was more than a personal defense, it was a turning point for the court system itself. The courtroom held its collective breath as Morrison addressed Cole directly, outlining the sequence of observations, corroborating evidence, and the institutional review underway. Marcus squeezed Emily's hand lightly, whispering, "You're doing what no one else dared." "Stay strong," she nodded, the weight of responsibility heavy yet empowering. The judge, once an unchallenged figure, now faced scrutiny at every level. Emily's work, the product of months of dedication and meticulous record-keeping, had transformed a single case into a systemic challenge. And as Cole's jaw tightened, he could not yet see the full impact of the reckoning that Emily's bravery had set into motion. The courtroom buzzed with tension as Cole's usual commanding demeanor began to crumble under the scrutiny of undeniable evidence. Emily sat upright, notebook open, her pen poised, capturing every subtle twitch of his expression and every word that dripped with frustration. Julian Pierce addressed the court, his voice calm yet firm. "Your Honor, the prosecution's failure to verify Emily Carter's presence before pursuing this charge is a procedural violation. Coupled with documented bias patterns, it constitutes sufficient grounds for dismissal." Cole's eyes narrowed, his face flushing. "This is an insult to the judiciary. I demand respect." But the room had shifted. Observers, court staff, and even members of the prosecution team were quietly acknowledging the mounting evidence. Dr. Vanessa Brooks stepped forward once more, presenting additional verification documents from the scholarship program, including emails and time-stamped confirmations of Emily's attendance. Cole skimmed them, his impatience growing, yet unable to deny their authenticity. Pierce continued, producing statistical analyses and visual charts projected for the courtroom. "Judge Cole, for identical charges, minority defendants in your courtroom were interrupted an average of 7 times per hearing, compared to 1 interruption for white defendants. Sentence lengths were disproportionately longer. These are not isolated incidents. They represent a pattern of systemic inequity." A hush fell over the courtroom, the gravity of the findings settling in. Cole's gavel tapped nervously against the bench, each strike hollow compared to the weight of the facts presented. Emily's gaze remained steady, her voice calm yet authoritative when prompted to speak. "These records show patterns over 137 cases. Every observation is verified. Every discrepancy documented. I was simply recording what occurred, ensuring accountability." The courtroom seemed to exhale collectively. Cole's authority, once unchallenged, had fractured. Marcus watched his daughter, pride shining through his worry, aware that she had become a catalyst for change far beyond her years. Then a pivotal twist emerged. Director Lena Morrison of the State Judicial Ethics Committee approached the bench. Her presence was commanding, professional, and deliberate. "Judge Cole, we have been reviewing your court practices for months. The documentation provided by Emily Carter aligns with prior complaints and systemic investigations. Her methodology is sound, and her data corroborates our findings of bias and abuse of power." Cole's lips pressed into a thin line, a rare vulnerability betraying him. The realization that his long-standing dominance was now being dissected methodically sent ripples through his composed exterior. Emily's notes, her meticulous records of every courtroom encounter, became a tool of justice far beyond her original intent. Each page validated by independent oversight and corroborating witnesses, including Dr. Brooks, demonstrated the depth and scale of the misconduct. The courtroom's energy shifted irreversibly. It was no longer merely a hearing about a trespassing charge, but a reckoning for unchecked authority and entrenched bias. Cole attempted to speak, to regain control, but the measured authority of Pierce and the Ethics Committee left him stifled. Every objection was met with calm procedural counterpoints, every claim of authority undermined by verifiable evidence. Emily felt the gravity of the moment. Her courage, her preparation, and her unwavering dedication had transformed the courtroom into a stage for accountability. And as Cole's frustration mounted, the spectators recognized that the balance of power had decisively shifted. Emily Carter, once a nervous teenager facing an unjust charge, was now the focal point of systemic accountability, and the courtroom could not look away. Cole sat rigidly behind the bench, his face pale beneath the courtroom lights, the weight of scrutiny pressing down like a physical force. Every observer, from the gallery to the prosecution, watched him carefully, sensing the fracture in his authority. Emily, notebook open, remained composed, her voice steady when Pierce addressed the court. Charts and graphs projected onto the screen displayed clear disparities in sentencing, interruptions, and consultation times, leaving little room for denial. Judge Cole, Pierce continued, we have verified records from the Grandview Hotel confirming Emily Carter's legitimate presence for the scholarship program. Your previous assumptions were unverified, and the prosecution neglected due diligence. Cole's lips pressed tightly, each word he tried to utter stifled by the mounting evidence. Marcus leaned forward in his seat, a subtle squeeze on Emily's shoulder reminding her of his unwavering support. Dr. Vanessa Brooks rose again, explaining the program's purpose and why the professional hotel setting was selected. The environment ensures students from underrepresented communities are treated with dignity and fairness. Emily Carter's attendance was authorized and documented. The hotel staff escorted her directly to the conference room. Cole's eyes flicked to the documents, then back to Emily, realizing the extent to which his dismissal of facts had been exposed. His gavel rested heavily before him, but even it could not command the truth. Pierce then highlighted a broader pattern. Over 6 months, statistical analysis shows minority defendants in this court receive longer sentences and fewer procedural accommodations than white defendants. Interruptions, time with counsel, and plea deal offers all display significant disparities. These are systemic issues, not isolated events. Murmurs filled the room as observers absorbed the stark contrast between the data and Cole's long-standing practices. Cole's posture stiffened, his usual confidence evaporating. Emily felt a quiet surge of resolve as the evidence aligned. Her careful record-keeping, begun as a personal project, had transformed into a professional and impactful indictment of procedural bias. Each annotation, every detail captured in her notebook, now held institutional significance. The courtroom energy had shifted irreversibly. She was no longer just defending herself, but illuminating structural failings in the justice system. Then, Lena Morrison of the State Judicial Ethics Committee addressed Cole directly, her tone measured but uncompromising. Judge Cole, our ongoing review of your cases, corroborated by Emily Carter's documentation and independent verification, indicates repeated conduct inconsistent with judicial ethics. Observations of bias, differential treatment, and misuse of authority have been validated. This body is taking immediate note for further action. Cole's face betrayed the first genuine signs of panic. The control he had wielded for decades was slipping beyond reach. The courtroom was silent, tension thick in the air. Emily's heartbeat remained steady, her resolve unwavering. Her months of preparation, meticulous documentation, and courage to stand firm had transformed a seemingly routine trespassing case into a pivotal moment for judicial accountability. Observers recorded, whispered, and took notes, capturing every nuance. Cole's frustration escalated, his authority undermined at every turn by verifiable facts and professional oversight. And as Emily's pen moved across the page, the young scholar realized that her efforts had sparked something far greater than personal vindication, a systemic challenge to entrenched injustice, with consequences that would echo beyond the walls of this courthouse. Cole's gavel lay untouched, a symbol of his diminishing control. As Director Lena Morrison and Julian Pierce methodically outlined the ethical violations and corroborating evidence, the courtroom's attention was absolute. Emily remained seated, calm yet vigilant, her notebook a record of every gesture, every word, every micro-expression that had revealed Cole's persistent bias. The data she had collected over months now resonated with undeniable authority, reinforced by Brooks's expert testimony and the hotel's verified documentation. Pierce addressed the judge directly. Your Honor, these are patterns, not anomalies. Statistical analysis confirms disparities in sentence lengths, interruptions, and consultation times. Minority defendants consistently receive harsher treatment. Your courtroom records, corroborated by independent witnesses, indicate systemic inequities. Cole's jaw tightened. He pounded the gavel faintly, but the sound lacked authority. The room, filled with observers, murmured quietly in disbelief. Emily's notes reflected the collective reaction, the subtle shifts in posture, the whispers, the apprehension. Every detail she captured added weight to the unfolding accountability. Emily's father, Marcus, exhaled softly beside her, pride mixing with lingering anxiety. He had watched her navigate intimidation and bias with calm, meticulous attention. Her courage had transformed the courtroom's dynamics. She had turned fear into strategic action, meticulous observation into evidence, and quiet determination into systemic impact. Each recorded entry of Cole's behavior was no longer just academic. It was a testament to the reality of entrenched injustice. Then, the hotel's corporate confirmation documents were submitted formally into evidence. Victor Langford, the owner, reluctantly acknowledged that the National Merit Scholars Program had indeed booked the conference room and that Emily had been escorted properly. Cole's expression faltered. Even he could not dispute these facts. His smirk, once a shield of authority, had vanished. The courtroom was witnessing the unraveling of his long-held dominance. Emily rose to address the court briefly, her voice steady and measured. "I documented what I observed because it affects lives beyond mine. These patterns of unequal treatment have serious consequences for families and communities. I wanted to ensure accountability and fairness, to provide evidence that could not be ignored." Her statement reverberated through the room. Observers and officials leaned forward, the magnitude of her courage sinking in. This wasn't simply a teen defending herself. It was an intervention in systemic inequity. Morrison stepped forward again, her tone precise. "Judge Cole, the State Judicial Ethics Committee has compiled months of corroborating evidence, including procedural anomalies and testimony from multiple observers. Today's documentation provided by Emily Carter aligns with our ongoing investigations and demonstrates systemic bias and abuse of authority." Cole's face was pale, his authority eroded in real time. The gavel remained idle, a powerless symbol against the combined force of meticulous research, verified documentation, and procedural oversight. As the session progressed, Emily realized the courtroom had shifted irreversibly. The narrative she had carefully recorded in her notebook had transformed into actionable evidence. Her courage, her preparation, and her unwavering attention to detail were challenging entrenched injustice. Cole's frustration and faltering authority became more evident with every procedural counter, every corroborated fact. The courthouse, once a place of fear for Emily, had become a stage for accountability, a forum where meticulous observation and integrity could confront entrenched power. The courtroom had transformed into a theater of reckoning. Judge Cole sat stiffly, pale and tense, his once commanding presence eroded by layers of evidence, witness testimony, and meticulous records. Emily's notebook lay open before her, pages filled with 7 months of detailed observation, patterns of interruptions, sentencing disparities, and unequal treatment of minority defendants. Every statistic, every date, every verbatim quote was verified, supported by Dr. Brooks and the hotel's corporate documentation. Julian Pierce rose, his tone calm but decisive. "Your Honor, the evidence is clear. These records, coupled with independent confirmation, demonstrate a pattern of systemic bias. Your courtroom consistently treats defendants differently based on race and socioeconomic status. Procedural safeguards have been ignored and legitimate defenses dismissed. Emily Carter's documentation captures these injustices precisely." Cole's face flushed, his hands clenched on the bench. He slammed the gavel, but the sound was hollow, lacking authority. Director Lena Morrison of the State Judicial Ethics Committee stepped forward. "Judge Cole, your conduct, as documented and corroborated, violates the principles of impartiality and fairness fundamental to the judicial role. This committee recommends immediate suspension and further investigation." Cole's jaw tightened. He looked around, realizing that decades of unchallenged authority were collapsing. For the first time, he was confronted not by a single challenge, but by a meticulously documented pattern that exposed systemic failure. Emily felt a quiet sense of empowerment. Her months of careful preparation, meticulous observation, and steadfast courage had transformed a personal defense into a catalyst for accountability. She had borne the weight of intimidation, condescension, and humiliation, yet her resolve had not wavered. Every note in her notebook had contributed to a broader truth. The justice system needed scrutiny, oversight, and reform. The Grandview Hotel documents were reviewed publicly, confirming Emily's authorized presence for the scholarship program. Victor Langford, the hotel's owner, acknowledged procedural oversights by his staff, but confirmed the legitimacy of her attendance. This verification, combined with Emily's detailed records and statistical evidence, left Cole unable to challenge the facts. His authority, once absolute in this courtroom, had been systematically dismantled. As the Ethics Committee and Pierce laid out the cumulative evidence, the courtroom murmured. Observers whispered, lawyers exchanged glances, and the gravity of the unfolding accountability weighed on every individual present. Cole's attempts to interject were consistently countered by verified records and professional oversight. Emily's meticulous documentation had transformed from a personal project into a force of systemic change, highlighting entrenched inequities and abuse of power. In that charged moment, the emotional peak was undeniable. Emily understood that her courage, preparation, and persistence had created a ripple far beyond herself. The courtroom, once a space of fear and intimidation for her, had become a platform for justice, exposure, and reflection. Cole's downfall was imminent, his facade of control stripped away by truth, evidence, and unwavering integrity. The lesson was clear. Accountability is earned through diligence, courage, and unwavering commitment to truth. And even the most entrenched authority can be challenged by careful, persistent observation and action. Within hours, the county courthouse erupted with activity as the consequences of Cole's actions became undeniable. Chief Judge Veronica Marlowe presided over an emergency hearing, her demeanor calm, measured, and attentive, a stark contrast to Cole's theatrical authoritarianism. After reviewing the verified evidence, she announced with authority, "All charges against Emily Carter are dismissed with prejudice. The record will reflect that these charges were without merit and pursued improperly." Victor Langford approached Emily and Marcus in the gallery, his expression sincere. "Miss Carter, I apologize for my misjudgment. Your research and documentation revealed systemic failures. I would like to offer you an internship in our corporate social responsibility department. Your insight is invaluable." Emily felt a swell of pride and validation. Her careful notes and courage had not only cleared her name, but opened new opportunities. At the State Judicial Ethics Committee, Director Lena Morrison and her team began reviewing Cole's history. Patterns of disproportionate sentencing, systemic bias, and manipulation of case assignments emerged clearly. Over 200 complaints from former defendants were logged, and pro bono representation was coordinated for the most egregious cases. Legal experts confirmed that Emily's documentation provided irrefutable evidence of misconduct. The media highlighted her courage. Headlines called her the teen who exposed courthouse bias. The state legislature acted swiftly. The Judicial Accountability Act was introduced, mandating transparent sentencing, independent review panels, and annual bias training for all judges. Emily was invited to speak at press conferences, explaining the methodology and importance of documenting systemic inequities. Her work became a model for accountability, showing how meticulous observation and courage could inspire meaningful reform. The Grandview Hotel implemented diversity and inclusion training, launching a scholarship program for underprivileged students interested in leadership and hospitality management. Emily served as an advisor, her insights shaping opportunities that directly addressed past oversights. Across the state, courts adopted transparency measures, including recording proceedings and publishing sentencing data for public review. Former defendants from Cole's courtroom received reassessments, some overturning unjust sentences, others reducing penalties. Emily's high school recognized her contributions, inviting her to speak on civic engagement. "Change starts with paying attention," she told peers. "Document what you see. Speak up when injustice occurs. Courage and diligence can transform systems." Acceptance letters from top universities arrived, many offering full scholarships, supporting her decision to study law and judicial reform. In the renovated Equal Justice Chamber, Emily returned to the podium during Judge Amara Patterson's inauguration. She addressed a diverse audience. Justice isn't automatic. It requires vigilance, courage, and the willingness to stand firm when faced with injustice. My project began with careful observation, but it grew into a call for systemic accountability. Applause filled the room, a testament to her impact. Dr. Vanessa Brooks announced an expansion of the scholarship program, highlighting students from diverse backgrounds pursuing legal and judicial reform. Emily's role as an advisor ensured that opportunities were meaningful, equitable, and impactful. The courthouse, once intimidating, now featured multilingual information, community liaisons, and transparent oversight measures. Cole faded from public view, disbarred and held accountable, his former colleagues retrained or replaced. The system, scarred but resilient, had begun to reform. Emily's meticulous documentation, courage, and unwavering commitment to truth had catalyzed lasting change. Subscribe to the channel, leave a comment, and share this video. This message, echoing Emily's story, reminded viewers that accountability, vigilance, and courage are essential to safeguarding justice, and that one person's determination can transform systems for generations.